Hey, son.
Hey, Dad. What is it now?
Hey, sorry I can't be there. I was delayed on business. It's only for one night. I'll be home tomorrow. Are you sure you're okay on your own? I could still get a babysitter to come over.
I don't need a babysitter. I'm 10. I can take care of myself.
Are you sure? It could be scary spending the night alone.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, it's past your bedtime. How about I tell you a bedtime story?
Oh, if you must.
Something wrong?
Is this going to be another stupid, scary story?
What? I thought you liked my stories.
Maybe when I was a little kid, but they're not scary now.
All right. I get it. So now you're 10. You're a big man. All grown up and nothing can scare you anymore.
Well, your stories are kind of lame. Sorry, Dad, just being honest.
I see.
If you're going to tell a scary story, you need to make sure it's really scary.
Well, there is one story I could tell you, but I don't know. It might be a bit too scary.
I can handle it.
Okay, here we go. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Colby.
The start is like a fairy tale.
Bear with me. This boy named Colby used the internet a lot. He joined a lot of websites. He started talking to other kids online. He made friends with another boy named Stranger Danger 23. They liked the same movies and TV shows. They played games together online. They chatted and laughed at each other's jokes.
And they got married and lived happily ever after at the end.
Not quite. After they had been friends for a few months, Stranger Danger heard that Colby's birthday was coming up. And since they were best friends, Stranger Danger 23 wanted to send him a cool present. He asked Colby for his home address. Colby was hesitant at first, but he thought about it for a while. He's known Stranger Danger 23 for a long time, so he figured it wouldn't hurt to give him his address, as long as he promised not to give it to anyone else. Stranger Danger 23 swore he wouldn't. So Colby gave him the address, and Stranger Danger 23 said he would mail the package right away. Do you think that was a good idea, son?
Probably not.
Well, after a while, neither did Colby. The boy had second thoughts about giving out his address, especially to someone he didn't really know. His parents had always told him not to do that about it. He felt nervous and guilty, and the fear and the guilt grew and grew until they were gnawing away at him. By bedtime the next night, he decided to tell his parents what he had done. They would probably be angry. They might even punish him, but it would be worth it to put his mind at ease. He laid in his bed and he waited for his parents to come upstairs to tuck him in. Colby lay there in the darkness and listened. He listened to all the noises throughout the house. The humming of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the sound of the TV in the living room, the cries of his baby brother in the next room, the soft patter of the rain outside, the scraping of branches against his window.
This story is putting me to sleep.
But there were some other noises he couldn't quite account for. Finally, he heard his dad's footsteps coming up the stairs. "Hey, Dad," Colby called out nervously. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" In the darkness, he saw the bedroom door slowly creak open. His dad stuck his head through the doorway. "Well, yes, son," said his dad in a muffled voice. "Are you okay, Dad?" the boy asked. "Well, yes, son," his dad replied. Is Mom around?" "Here I am," said his mom in a high-pitched voice. She stuck her head through the doorway as well. "What do you want to tell us?" she asked. I think I made a big mistake," said Colby. "I accidentally gave our address to someone on the internet." "Oh, you shouldn't have done that," said his mom. "We told you never to do that." "Who did you give it to?" asked his dad. This kid named Stranger Danger 23, said Colby. "Oh, but he wasn't really a kid," said his mom. His dad said, "He just pretended to be a kid to fool you. And you know what he did? He broke into our house and murdered both of us, just so he could spend some time with you."
"Oh, God."
All of a sudden, the door opened wide, and a fat man in a yellow raincoat stood there in the doorway. He was holding something in his hands, the severed heads of Colby's mom and dad. Colby gasped and let out a shriek of terror.
"No."
The man dropped the heads on the floor and took out his knife.
No.
After several hours, the boy was almost dead. His terrified screams had become pitiful whimpers. Then the killer noticed something. He heard the baby crying in the other room. He bent down and pulled his knife out of the bloody mess that had once been Colby. He turned and followed the sound of the baby's cries. When he got to the nursery, he walked up to the crib. He picked up the baby and held it in his arms. The baby stopped crying. It looked up at him and smiled. The man had never held a baby before. He stroked the baby's cheek. He walked out of the nursery and he took the baby with him. He took the baby home and raised him as his very own son. He named him William.
But Dad, my name is William.
I know it is, son. Son? Well, William, was that story scary enough for you, son? Want to hear another? Sleep tight, son.
There were two teenage boys named Ron and Chris, who both shared a keen interest in the paranormal. Whenever they met, they would always have a new scary ghost story or spooky urban legend to share with each other. One day, Chris was browsing on the internet when he came across a website that had a lot of urban legends. He read a story about a certain cliff on top of a hill that was located close to his home. The website had plenty of pictures of the cliff, the hill, and the surrounding area. As he read the legend associated with the hill, Chris knew his friend would be interested. The next time he met Ron, he told him about the haunted cliff. It was a steep hill that was very dense. For some inexplicable reason, it was known as a spot that was notorious for suicides. Every year, at least 20 or 30 people would throw themselves off this cliff and plunge to their deaths. Nobody could explain why. They said that the spot was haunted by the ghosts of all the people who had committed suicide there. When Ron went home that evening, he decided that he had to check out the cliff. He desperately wanted to see a ghost. So that very night, he set out for the mountains where the cliff was located. It took him about half an hour to get there. It was almost midnight when he arrived at the hilltop, and there was not a single person around. It was dark and deathly quiet. The atmosphere was so spooky and ominous that it sent a chill down Ron's spine. "Wow, this place is creepy," he muttered to himself as he cautiously walked towards the edge of the cliff and peered down into its depths. He began thinking about all of the people who had thrown themselves down into the inky blackness. The thought of it made his hair stand on end. It was so fascinating that he felt compelled to tell his friend Chris about it. So he pulled out his cell phone to call him. However, since he was high up in the mountains, he couldn't get any signal. Looking around, Ron noticed a solitary phone booth standing nearby. He went inside, put some coins in the slot, and dialed Chris's number. "Hello? Chris? Guess where I am right now," he said. "I'm at the haunted cliff on the hill you told me about. The view is amazing. You've got to come up here and see it sometime." "Yeah, I'd like to," replied Chris. "I saw all the pictures on the website and..." "Wait a second. What number are you calling me from? I don't see your number on my phone. In fact, I can't see any number." Ron laughed. "Oh, I couldn't get any signal on my mobile, so I'm calling from the payphone up here." His friend was confused. "Payphone? There's no payphone up there. If there was one, I would have seen it in the pictures." "What are you talking about?" said Ron. "I'm standing in the phone booth, right on the hilltop. Hold on, I'd better go. There's a line of people outside waiting to use the phone. I'll call you when I get back home." As soon as he said this, Chris shouted, "No! Ron, don't get out of the phone booth! I know that place. I'll be right there in 30 minutes. Whatever you do, just don't move." "What's wrong?" asked Ron. "Just promise me you'll stay where you are. Don't move an inch, okay? And don't hang up the phone. I'm coming." When his friend hung up, Ron felt a wave of fear envelop him. He stood in the phone booth and kept the phone receiver pressed to his ear. Looking over his shoulder, he saw a line of people standing outside the phone booth, silently watching him. The look in their eyes sent a shiver down his spine. Half an hour later, when Chris arrived at the top of the hill, he found his friend standing at the very edge of the cliff. He was holding his cell phone against his ear. There was no phone booth and no line of people waiting to use the phone. If he had moved an inch, he would have fallen off the edge and plunged to his death. There were 4 young boys who were the best of friends. One night, they decided to drive out into the woods. There was an old cabin in the middle of the forest that was said to be haunted by a ghost. The local people sometimes visited the place to test their courage. The boys didn't believe in ghosts, and they wanted to take a picture of themselves near the cabin so they could show off to their other friends of how courageous they were. That night, the 4 young men set out in a car and drove up a steep and lonely mountain road towards the woods. Eventually, they reached the cabin and parked outside. According to the urban legend they had heard, if you stood at the door of the cabin and repeated a certain phrase, a ghost was supposed to appear. Together, they stood in front of the cabin door, illuminated by the car's headlights, and said, come out, wherever you are!" over and over again. Then they waited for about 15 minutes, but nothing happened. "Just like I thought," said one boy. "There's no ghost." "Yeah, it's just a stupid legend," said another boy, trying not to show his fear. "Come on, this is boring. Let's take a picture and go home." The boys gathered at the door of the cabin and left the camera on the bonnet of the car with the cabin just behind them. The timer ran down and it took a photo of them. Then they all climbed back into the car. However, the boy who was sitting in the driver's seat didn't turn on the ignition. The others waited a few moments in silence. Then they grew impatient. "Hey, why aren't we moving?" shouted a boy from the back seat. The driver didn't respond. He just sat there. "Come on, man, what's wrong with you?" said his friends. The boy in the driver's seat slowly turned and faced his friends. His face was pale and small droplets of sweat were rolling down his cheeks. "Guys, we're friends, right?" he said. His voice sounded like it was shaking. "Of course we are. Best friends. You guys would always stick by me, right?" he asked. "Sure we would. Through thick and thin. If I were in some kind of trouble, you guys would never leave me, right?" he asked. "No way! You can always rely on us." The young man in the driver's seat smiled weakly and mopped his brow. There were tears in his eyes. In a faint whisper, he said, "Then look at my feet." The other boys exchanged puzzled glances, and their eyes slowly moved down towards his feet. 2 white hands were coming up through the floor of the car. The long, gnarled fingers were tightly gripping the ankles of the young man in the driver's seat. For a few moments, his friends stared in shock. Then suddenly, they started screaming in terror. They scrambled to open the car doors and fled as fast as their legs would carry them, leaving their friend alone in the car. The boys didn't stop running until they came out of the woods and to the bottom of the hill. Stopping to catch their breath, they looked at each other with horrified faces. After a while, they cautiously made their way back to the woods near the cabin. They stood at a distance and watched. The car was still sitting there, the headlights illuminating the cabin. But the young man in the driver's seat was gone.
Subscribe to the channel and enjoy more videos. My name is Gordon and I'm 26 years old. I work in an office in the city on the weekends. I used to love to get away from all the hustle and bustle and take a trip to the countryside. Luckily, I have a cottage in a small village which is located right at the edge of the forest. How I used to love to get out of the city and spend the weekend in my little cottage. Why did I stop? Well, I'll tell you. One day after a hard week at work, I needed some rest. So I decided to get out of town. I went home, packed my bags, threw them in the trunk, and drove off. When I arrived in the village, it was late in the evening and I was tired from the long drive. I went straight to bed and I fell asleep quickly. One day, in the middle of the night, I was awakened by the sound of my car alarm going off. I looked out the window, but there was nobody in sight. I found my car keys, pressed the button to shut off the alarm. When the awful noise stopped, I laid down again and tried to fall back to sleep. All of a sudden, the alarm went off again. I didn't feel like getting up, so I just grabbed my keys and pressed the button again. Everything was peaceful and quiet. 5 minutes later, the alarm went off for a third time. Once or twice could have been an accident, but now I was wondering what was going on. Could someone be playing tricks on me in the middle of the night? I got up again and pressed the button to turn off the alarm, but this time I didn't lay down. I stood at the window, behind the curtains, and watched. After a few minutes, I saw something by the light of the moon. A shadow emerged from the bushes and slowly approached the car. I could just about make out the shape. It was something tall, skinny, and black. The figure reached out with its long, thin arms and knocked on the car. The alarm went off again, and quick as a flash, the dark figure retreated back into the bushes. At that moment, I realized what was going on and began shaking with fear. I turned off the alarm and continued to watch. The thing emerged from the bushes again and slid silently over to the gate, threw a hand through them, and removed the partition holding the gates closed. I was paralyzed with fear and I couldn't move. My mind was overcome by panicked thoughts. What was it? What did it want from me? What was it doing? Would it ever go away? A shiver ran through my body from my head down to my toes. My mouth was dry and my heart was beating fast. I was so tense, I was gritting my teeth and clenching my hands into fists. I got control of myself and ran down the stairs as fast as my legs would carry me to the ground floor. I wanted to look for something I could use to protect myself. However, just as I was about to switch on the lights, I suddenly froze in my tracks. The dark figure was at the window. It was pressed up against the glass, staring in, looking to see whether or not there was someone home. I immediately ducked down behind the sofa and peered out. That's when I realized what all these tricks with the car were for. It was trying to lure its victim outside. I could not take my eyes off its hideous face. The skin was the color of ash and covered with wrinkles. Its eyes were small, beady, and completely black. Instead of a nose, there were 2 ragged holes. It didn't have any lips, just 2 rows of sharp, yellow teeth. Its breathing was so heavy and hoarse that it was misting up the window. I just knew it was not going to go away. After standing at the window for a few moments, I heard a rustling noise as it came to the front door. I watched as it tried to push its fingers through the gap under the door. The handle began to twitch wildly up and down, and the creature emitted a chilling sound. It was not like the human voice. It was a deep, beastly growl, like an angry dog chewing on a bone. I knew that if it heard me, it would keep trying until it found a way to get into the house. I just crouched down behind the sofa, hiding in the shadows and desperately trying not to make a sound. Tears began involuntarily streaming down my face, no matter how much I tried to stop them. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, and I was shaking like a leaf, just waiting for it to end. I don't know how long I cowered there. I must have passed out. When I woke up and looked at the door, the creature was gone. The door was still in place, and everything seemed secure. I have never been so relieved in all my life. I ran upstairs and looked out the window. It was light outside, and there was no sign of anything wrong. Taking a chance, I grabbed my keys, and without stopping to collect any of my things, I ran out towards the car. I jumped in the car, locked all the doors, and drove away from the village as fast as I could. I didn't stop driving until I got back to the city. When I got back to my apartment, I turned on the radio and heard a news report. The announcer said that in the village, the dead bodies of 2 girls had been discovered. Their corpses had been mutilated and dumped in a swamp. I guess the creature found what it was looking for.
I hate it when my brother Leslie has to go away. My parents constantly try to explain to me how sick he is, that I am lucky for having a brain where all the chemicals flow properly to their destinations like undammed rivers. When I complain about how bored I am without a little brother to play with, they try to make me feel bad by pointing out that his boredom likely far surpasses mine, considering his confinement to a dark room in an institution. I always beg for them to give him one last chance. Of course, they did at first. Leslie has been back home several times, each shorter in duration than the last. Every time, without fail, it all starts again. The neighborhood cats with gouged eyes showing up to his toy chest. My dad's razor found dropped on the baby slide in the park across the street. Mom's vitamins replaced by bits of dishwasher tablets. The list is never ending. One day, Mom and Dad brought Leslie home. Not because he was getting better, but because I insisted. I wanted to play with my brother at least for a day. We had lunch and I took Leslie to play in the park next to our house. Mom and Dad were seated on a bench nearby and had eyes on Leslie all the time. Leslie and I were playing tug-of-war with a rope. Mr. and Mrs. Stillwood, our neighbors, stopped by to talk to my parents, and they were also engrossed in their talk that Mom and Dad took their eyes off of us for some time. A few moments later, Mom came rushing on, hearing a scream. She found us behind a tree. A baby, about a year old, was tied upside down to a tree with a rope, the rope that we were playing with. The scream was of the baby's mother. Leslie had a sharp knife-like object in his hand. Standing still near the tree, he looked at everyone with his innocent eyes. Dad hurriedly undid the rope and handed the baby to his mother. My mom got furious and yelled at Leslie for doing such a ruthless thing. Mom and Dad immediately took Leslie back to the rehabilitation institution and swore never to bring him home again until his treatment was over. My parents are hesitant now and don't even listen to me when I ask them to give Leslie another chance. They say he is not ready to come out of the rehabilitation yet. They say I will have to put up with my boredom if it means staying safe from him. I hate it when Leslie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he's back. After all, I can't use my knife-sharp light object on anyone if Leslie's not around.
I was living in a house in Sunbeam Beach that had been there since the 1920s. In its history, it had been a speakeasy, a brothel, and a house for smuggling illegal immigrants. One day, my wife and I were having an argument. I can't even recall what it was about. She walked down the block to get a cup of coffee and cool off, and I was alone in the house. The way the place was built was incredibly haphazard. There was a bedroom and a living room on one side, then a bathroom with 2 entrances. On the other side of the bathroom was a hallway that had windows on one side and 2 bedrooms on the other. From my bedroom, I could look across the hall into the bathroom, then through the bathroom and down the other hall. I was standing at my dresser and I had just noticed movement out of the corner of my eye and looked down there. There was, and honest to God, this gives me goosebumps just speaking about it, even 17 years later, a black figure. It was maybe 3 feet tall, and it was only vaguely humanoid. It looked like black scribbles, like someone had scribbled a human shape, but the scribbles moved like electricity arcing. That's the best way to describe it. There was no sound that I could remember. I distinctly remember when I saw it, I wasn't afraid. I was like, what the fuck? Then it noticed me looking at it. I can't say it turned around, it just focused on me, I guess. Then I was scared. I didn't move, didn't scream, nothing. I was just frozen because it just freaking came at me. It rushed down the hall towards me. I have no idea what it intended, but as soon as it entered the bathroom, the door closest to me just slammed shut on it. I screamed. Ah! I yelled for my wife. She wasn't home. I went outside into the daylight and didn't go back in until she got home about 10 minutes later. My house was built in 1894. It's a single-family home, wood frame setting on a concrete block foundation. I've been living here for about 15 years. Of all the weird things that my siblings and me have seen or heard in this house, this one event is my favorite. This happened to my brother about 5 years ago. My brother and his best friends had started a garage band playing mostly rock music. His friends could only get together on Sunday afternoons. They would practice into the early evening and would usually call it quits by 8 p.m. This was the time I usually got ready and showered up to go to work as I worked the graveyard shift. This happened last fall, so the days were getting shorter. They had just finished a long session when the decision to head to someone else's house came about. My brother handed his keys to his buddy so they could load up the equipment. Everybody had left the basement, but the tricky part was that they needed to walk all the way back to the back of the basement, up the back stairs, through the kitchen doorway, down the hall into the living room and out to the front porch. Everyone was outside sitting in my brother's truck waiting for him. My brother was walking up the back stairs when he remembered that he had left his pancakes in a container sitting on a speaker in the basement. He decided to go back and get it. Now, the basement was not clean with full sight lines. There had been partitions made, some old boxes and racks sat smack in the middle, which were used by my brother's friends to keep their stuff in. So after my brother walked back to the basement and was about to retrieve his food container, when out of the corner of his eye he saw it. It was a shadowy figure right at his peripheral vision. This feeling of dread and uneasiness washed over my brother. We had been taught that if you are in the presence of a spirit or a ghost and you felt a bad vibe, to say a quick prayer or to cuss at it. My brother chose the latter. He basically told it, "Hey, fuck you, I don't have time for this shit." My brother started to walk to the back of the basement and briskly up the stairs, closing the doors and turning off the lights as he was walking out. The last light switch is on the opposite side of the front door. Luckily, the door was open, and the light from the street lamp was flooding in the living room with its amber light. My brother said he felt something at his back, but at no point did he turn around. As he flicked the last switch, the living room went dark, as did the rest of the house. He stepped out. He pulled the door, closing it behind him. Still holding his food container in one hand, he jogged down the few porch steps. He walked towards the front gate. Our house resides far from the main street, essentially having a large front yard but no rear garage. As he closed the gap between himself and his friend-laden truck, he kind of smiled and thought things over in his head, mad at himself for spooking out when there was no reason. He climbed into the driver's side of the truck, putting his seatbelt on and getting ready to pull out of the parking lot directly in front of the house when one of his friends asked, "Hey, wait, what about your brother? Isn't he coming with us?" And my brother answered, "What do you mean? He went to work early tonight. He's already gone. Do you see his car anywhere?" The next question asked was, "So then who was walking behind you when you were leaving the house?"
Samantha had two best friends named Jenny and Amber. Her father was taking her on a weekend vacation, and she invited them to come along. Her family owned a cabin in the woods, and on Friday evening, her father drove the girls there. "See that lake?" asked Samantha when they arrived. "That's Lake Samantha. My dad grew up here. He loved it so much, he named me after it." That night, after they had unpacked their things, the three girls sat around and thought of ways to amuse themselves. "Does anyone have any spooky stories?" asked Amber. "I have one," said Jenny. "It's a true story, too. It happened to a friend of mine. She was babysitting these two little kids one night. She was sitting in the dark by herself watching TV and the phone rang. She goes over and answers it and heard a voice on the other end breathing real heavy, and it said, "Have you checked on the children?" "Jenny, come on," Amber interrupted. "Everyone's heard that one. That's the lamest scary story ever. Does anyone else have a story, one that's actually true?" "I know one," said Samantha. "About 10 minutes hike from here, there's an old, broken-down house. We passed it by on the way up here. It's out in the middle of nowhere, way of a little, narrow side road. A long time ago, a man lived there. His whole family was really wealthy, and they owned hundreds of acres of land around here. This man met a simple country girl, and they fell in love. His family wasn't too happy about it. They didn't think the girl was good enough for him, but he ignored them. He was an independent guy, and he went off and built a little house on a chunk of their land. He married this girl, and everything was wonderful. They had a daughter first, and after a few years they had a son too. This is where the story starts to go bad. Their son was sick, not physically, but mentally. He was sick in the head. He wasn't mentally disabled or anything. He was just a little off. By the time he was 9 years old, he became too much for his parents to handle, throwing temper tantrums, erratic sleeping patterns, disappearing into the woods and hiding, those kinds of things. Not knowing what to do about his son, the man turned to his family for help. His parents had taken the boy away. They sent him to a place deep in the woods. It wasn't an insane asylum, but it catered to people with special needs, if you know what I mean. His parents thought it was for the best. Over time, the family got used to not having him around. They gradually stopped visiting him. They functioned as if they had never even had a son, and everything went back to being wonderful again. 8 years later, the boy, who was about 16 or 17 at the time, managed to escape from the hospital. The staff did a search, but he was nowhere to be found. His family was notified. They were devastated. They were worried for his safety. He had been alone in the wilderness for weeks, and he was probably dead. But the boy wasn't dead. One night, he found his way back home. He crept into his house, and one by one, he slaughtered his entire family. His father, his mother, his sister, all of them, chopped to pieces. With the blood still dripping from his axe, he disappeared into the woods. When the grisly remains of his family were discovered a few days later, townsfolk in the surrounding area were horrified. The police tried to find the boy, but it was of no use. To this day, he has never been found. Since then, every year around harvest time, people start to go missing, and in their place, a doll will be left behind. Legend has it, the boy still roams the woods around these parts. Chopped to pieces. With the blood still dripping from his axe, he disappeared into the woods. When the grisly remains of his family were discovered a few days later, townsfolk in the surrounding area were horrified. The police tried to find the boy, but it was of no use. To this day, he has never been found. Since then, every year around harvest time, people start to go missing, and in their place, a doll will be left behind. Legend has it, the boy still roams the woods around these parts. The surrounding towns have bought into the legend, and they hang dolls on their front door for protection. They say that if the boy sees a doll hanging on the door of a house, he will pass by the house and leave the residents in peace. Nobody knows if it's true or not, but there's a doll hanging on every door of every house in town. "That's so creepy," cried Jenny. "Do you have a doll on your door?" "Of course," said Samantha. "My dad says he doesn't believe in legend, but we hung one up just in case." Apparently, the house is still haunted by the ghosts of his murdered family again, and if you go up there late at night, you can hear the whole thing take place all over again. "Do you think we could go up there?" Jenny asked. "Sure," said Samantha, "but tomorrow, during daylight. There's no sense in tempting fate." That night, the girls slept in the same room and huddled together, trying to pretend they weren't frightened by the story and expecting to hear something tapping at the window at any moment. The next morning, Samantha's father made them all a big breakfast and they went down to the lake for a swim. Around noon, they decided to make the trip up to the old haunted house. When they got there, the girls sensed an eerie presence in the old, dilapidated place. It was enough to make their skin crawl. They explored the ruins of the old house, peeking into corners and sitting through the rubble. After a while, Samantha spotted something half buried in the dirt. It was some sort of book. She dug it out and dusted it off. The kids gathered around as she opened it and began to flip through the yellow pages. "It looks like a diary or something," said Samantha. "Maybe it's his diary," Jenny whispered. "Whose diary?" asked Amber. "The guy," said Jenny. "The guy that killed his family." Samantha read the diary aloud as the others listened. "There's a dedication inscribed inside the cover," she said. "It reads, 'To my family, who I love and cherish, and who will always be with me.'" September 5th, 1987. "It has been hard alone. All they had to do was talk to me. They could not talk to me. I hear their voices late at night sometimes. Sometimes I hear their screams. It is cold and dark. I needed love. They did not love me. I am free, free from all of them. If they could not love me, they had to go. Dark sleep for everyone. I still hear their voices, always screaming." December 4th, 1987. "People have stopped looking for me. It is okay for me now. I live in the forest. I chase down the animals and put them in dark sleep just like Mom and Dad. And Sis. I visit my old house at night. I listen to the voices. At least they talk to me now." October 3rd, 1995. "I left the forest years ago and moved into a small town nearby. Nobody recognizes me. No one knows who I am. I hear people telling my story sometimes. It makes me laugh inside. They all fear me. I still come to the forest sometimes. I spend the nights in my old house. Mom and Dad still talk to me. They say they are very proud of me." November 2nd, 1988. "Life has been good. I found a job. I bought a house. I met a girl. She is very quiet and pretty. Sometimes I bring her to the forest. She likes it. I let Mom and Dad see her. They like her." July 1st, 2000. "Today is a great day. I have a baby now. I am so happy. Mom and Dad are grandparents now. My wife isn't doing so well, though. It was hard for her. She might not make it. Maybe she will go in dark sleep." August 13th, 2010. "I am so proud of my child. She is just like me, except she is much smarter. She has no problems. She doesn't hear the voices. She goes to school and has lots of friends, not like me. Sometimes I take her to the woods. I love her so much. I named her after the lake. Samantha." For a few moments after Samantha stopped reading, there was a stunned silence. "What the heck?" cried Jenny. "Samantha, is this some sort of joke?" Amber asked nervously. "It isn't funny." This can't be true," Samantha whispered. "It couldn't possibly be." Just then, they heard the sound of twigs snapping behind them. When they turned around, they saw Samantha's father standing there. There was a strange, pained look on his face, and he was holding an axe in his hands. "You weren't supposed to find that," he muttered. "There's no other way now. Dark sleep for everyone." "No, Dad!" Samantha screamed. "No, no, no!" When Samantha's father had finished chopping up the bodies, he put the pieces in a large plastic bag and buried them deep in the woods so that no one would ever find them. Now they could be together forever. "I will watch over you now," he mumbled as he patted down the earth with his shovel. "You may not understand, but you will in time. This is the only way for us to be together. Dark sleep forever. We all stay together."
Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos.
So if you have no questions, I have a couple of things I'd like to say to you. course, I'm worrying about how you feel now because I find it a little bit strange that you're not upset.
Well, I'm being accused, which is, anyways, like I said, I reserve the right to remain silent. So.
No, okay, that's okay, but I just find it strange that you're not upset by all what's going on right now.
I find it very strange to be in this situation.
Adele Sorella guilty of second-degree murder in deaths of daughters. Sorella's daughters, Amanda, 9, and Sabrina, 8, were found dead on March 31st, 2009, inside the family's home in Laval. Adele Sorella has been found guilty of second-degree murder in the deaths of her 2 daughters. Sorella's daughters, Amanda, 9, and Sabrina, 8, died on March 31st, 2009, inside the family's home in Laval. Their bodies were discovered by Sorella's mother and her 2 brothers. There were no signs of violence on the bodies, and the police initially believed they had been poisoned. When that was ruled out, the focus of the investigation turned toward a hyperbaric chamber that had been purchased to treat Sabrina's juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. The suicidal Sorella was arrested the next day after her car crashed into a utility pole in another part of Laval. The force of the collision caused serious damage to the driver's side of her car, but Adele sustained no injuries. An accident scene investigator later testified that the crash was most likely deliberate. The suspect was initially taken to the hospital under police supervision, where she remained for 9 hours. She was then handcuffed and taken to the Laval Police Department, where her interrogation commenced at exactly 7 p.m. The segment of footage released by the Crown Attorney's Office starts 40 minutes into the procedure, and what makes this one of the more fascinating interrogations is the detective's approach and how he goes about trying to achieve his objective. What we know is that he initially discussed the car accident with the suspect and then double-checked that she was without physical injury. He then briefly discussed hospital food and hospitals in general, all essentially small talk for the purpose of rapport development. At around 25 minutes, she was informed that her 2 kids were dead and she was under arrest for first-degree murder. They read her rights, and she was given the choice to speak with an attorney, which she accepted, and was then taken to another room where she got legal advice over the phone for roughly 15 minutes. She was then brought back to the interrogation room and was asked if she wanted any water. She refused and stated that she was invoking her right to remain silent. In Canada, the suspect is well within their rights to not answer questions, yet this doesn't deter the interrogator from asking questions. They can essentially press on for as long as they want, and if the suspect is coaxed out of silence, anything that gets devolved is admissible in court.
I don't know what to think of it. I'm just trying to stay calm. That's it.
Why do you use the word strange? It's...
Because I have an accident, the next thing I know I'm here. So...
Okay, but you're not here because of the accident.
Anyways, I refuse to, I'm just retaining what my lawyer said.
Yeah, but you got me worried now. I have to make sure that you understand why you're here. Do you think you're here because of the accident?
No, I don't know why I'm here. They're telling me it's because something happened to my kids. So I'm saying, anyways, that's it.
Okay, but do you believe that?
Right now, like I said, I'm just staying calm and I'm waiting to go to court tomorrow and following my lawyer's advice. That's it.
But do you believe what I told you?
No, I don't believe what you're saying to me, so...
Okay, you don't believe me.
No. So...
What do you believe?
I'm just reserving my right to remain silent.
I'm just asking you, what do you believe?
what I believe. That's all.
Which is,
I said, I'm here right now, and
do you
I'll go to court and that's it.
do you believe that your daughters are alive?
Yes. So
But
I'm staying calm.
I have the regret to inform you that they're dead. Both of them.
No, they're not. So
That's why you're not upset.
I told you I'm staying calm,
Yeah,
and
but
everything will be fine.
and not only that they are deceased, both of them, but you are under arrest for killing them.
Look, I'm their mother, so
I know. That's why it's so difficult. What is the machine for pressure? What do you use it for? Pressure tank. What do you use it for?
that's Sabrina for her arthritis.
She needs it for arthritis?
She has juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Yeah, we were able to get rid of it because of it.
It works?
Yep. Doesn't have to take steroids or any of that stuff. So it's done very well for her. She's grown a lot. She's become, yeah. So she did very, very, very well.
Okay, and what are the treatment? How many times a week or?
Now it's only like once a week, but I haven't done it in over quite a long time.
Because she
once,
doesn't
twice
need
a
it?
week. No, she's in remission.
Okay.
So she's doing very well. She's grown 4 inches. She never gains weight, but she's grown. So
Does she have to take medication?
no more. No more medication.
Okay. So you don't need as much as you needed to, the machine?
No, but it's something that you need. You can keep up in her body to keep her healthy.
So you can do it from time to time and it's still gonna work?
Yeah.
How long has it been without using it?
I don't know, 6, 8 months.
Oh, before Christmas.
Yeah.
That's good. That's very good. Is it painful when she used that?
No,
No. It's just raise the pressure and that's it?
that's it.
Okay. Do you have to follow a course to operate that machine?
No, it's a friend shows me how to do it. So,
Is it complicated?
no.
No. It must be expensive though.
It's worth it for your kids.
Yeah.
They're 6, it's
Yeah.
worth it. It's better than giving them medication, and it's something that she can grow out of, well, better for her. So,
Yeah. How we would do anything for our kids. That's for sure.
yeah. So,
We want the best for them.
yeah, we do.
Detective Delisle talks about how people will perceive what Sorella is alleged to have done. It's a rare instance where Sorella actually had an exchange with Delisle.
Everybody's gonna think that you couldn't bear the fact that they would be happy without you. They're gonna say that, and that's why you killed them. People don't realize that they are your daughters. And that you couldn't stand to be part of them if they were with somebody else. So what's gonna come, there's gonna be a lot of disapprobation on what you did. And a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of anger at you. You're gonna have to face that. I'm just warning you in advance. You just have to keep focused on the reason why you did it. This is your strength. You disagree? You do disagree. You're difficult to read, but now you disagree with what I'm saying. Why? You can tell me. Don't be afraid. I won't get mad. Why do you disagree with what I just said?
People have the right to think whatever they want. Doesn't mean it's true or not true. It's their perception or what they think. Doesn't mean it's what it is. So
it's probably not. Also, I'm going further than you. It's probably not. Why not?
Doesn't matter. They already decided that that's what it is. So it doesn't matter what you say or what you do.
Detective Delisle shows Sorella 4 crime scene photographs taken inside her home where the bodies of both her daughters were found. The photographs are of the girls' bodies after the paramedics tried to revive them.
I know, but there's one thing that we need an explanation on. We need to explain this.
I'm gonna talk to my lawyer.
Look at that. This is the truth. These are your daughters. Something brought you to do that to them. How can we explain this? How is it possible that you brought your brother to see this? You send it home, knowing you will find this. Why weren't you there? How can you explain that this could happen? What in your life brought you to that? We have to explain this. Look at that. You gave them life. You brought them up. They trusted you. Can you still say it's not true? How come you don't want to explain that? How come you don't have any reaction? How come you can look at that?
I'm not saying anything.
This is the truth. This is reality. This is what happened. This is how you left them. This is Sabrina and Amanda. And you left them there to be found by your brother. Your brother had to try to revive them because he loved them. You owe him an explanation why he had to do that. Why is the one who had to call the police? The ambulance. Why is he the one who had to save them? And he was not able to. Why you weren't there? Why did you leave? Why did you leave them there, alone? You told me you loved them. You left them alone. You don't even react to that. You deny this, you flee this. What are you doing?
The interrogation is almost over, and Sorella still maintains that her girls are alive, despite having been shown photographs of their lifeless bodies. Detective Delisle then asks her about what day it is. He later testified that the question was an attempt to see if she was mentally stable.
You want to say something? I'm still listening.
No, I don't want to say anything.
Okay.
I don't believe that's them on the floor.
Sorry? Did you say that? You don't believe that's them on the floor?
Just leave them like that, yeah.
Okay. Who do you believe it is?
I'm just
I don't know. Tell me. Let's play that game.
No, I'm not playing any game.
That's not them on the floor. Okay. We took what? Actors?
I'm gonna think of my kids as I choose to think of my kids.
And you see them all.
I just want to go back to myself.
Okay, but we took actors to do that? Is that what you think? We put them on your living room floor? Same build? Same hair? Same face? And said, pretend you're dead? Is that what you're saying?
Not saying anything.
Yeah, you said, I don't believe that's them on the floor. You said that.
Not saying anything.
Did you look at those pictures? Didn't you recognize Sabrina and Amanda? Want to take another look?
I don't want to see any pictures.
Okay.
Flat.
But you're not serious when you say I don't believe that's them on the floor.
I just want to go back to myself.
I know that.
Okay, so that's it.
I know that. There's no more picture I can show you if you choose not to believe. I'd like to know how we manage that. How is it possible? There's no logic in what you're saying. Do you know what day it is today? Do you know what day it is today?
I don't need to say anything.
Do you know what day it is today?
Yes.
Tell me.
I'm just going to go back to myself.
What day it is today? What day is it? You don't know.
I don't want to see any of that stuff.
No, I'm not showing you anything. I'm just asking you, do you know what day we are today?
Yes, I do know what day we are.
Okay, tell
I'm
me.
not answering anything.
Okay, because you don't know.
Like I said, you can say, you can think what you want. I'm not going to answer anything.
Today is the 1st of April. And you seem to think it's April Fool's Day. You believe what you want.
The Crown was unable to produce any witnesses who were present when the girls died. The crux of their theory came from Caroline Tanguay, a pathologist who testified that the most likely cause of death was that the girls were somehow kept in the sealed hyperbaric chamber until they died from a lack of oxygen. When she testified in her defense, Sorella said the chamber was purchased by her husband while he was on the run to avoid arrest in Project Colossae, a combined forces special enforcement unit investigation that resulted in the 2006 arrests of 6 Montreal mafia leaders and dozens of their associates. Husband Giuseppe De Vito had conspired with members of the Rizzuto organization to smuggle more than 200 kilograms of cocaine in through Pierre Elliott Trudeau International Airport. Sorella told the jury that while he was on the run, De Vito had a friend install the chamber inside her home to replace an older model without her permission and against her will. She said that she had no idea how the newer model worked and that she never used it. Tanguay testified that if Amanda and Sabrina somehow remained in the sealed chamber long enough and no oxygen was supplied to it, they would have died gradually from a lack of oxygen, wherein the victim loses consciousness before dying. The jury was told that the oxygen levels inside a sealed chamber, like the one found in Sorella's home, would have become critically low after 90 minutes. Sorella, 52, had been found guilty of second-degree murder in the killing of her 2 young daughters, 9-year-old Amanda and 8-year-old Sabrina, last year. Adela Sorella is out of prison on a conditional release while she awaits her appeal. The judge released Sorella under the conditions that she put up a $25,000 guarantee, that she doesn't leave her home between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., and that she doesn't leave Quebec or apply for a passport.